Welcome, everyone, to our program, AAUW Fellows and Grantees. Please remember to stay muted throughout the program, since we are recording the program. We ask that you use the chat window for questions, and we will respond to the questions after each speaker. And the program recording link will be posted on the Jane Addams website during the week following the program. Now I'd like to briefly introduce our presenters. Thallyta Cavoli received an International Doctoral Degree Fellowship to study law at the University of Illinois with a specialization in poverty law, law and economics, and labor and employment law. And Tanya Carter, recipient of the Community Action Grant, has a master's in nonprofit leadership and is the founder of the Carter Community. Her project is Steps and STEM: Search, Try, Experience, and Prepare to Succeed in STEM. And Ruth Holtz of the AAUW Chicago branch will be our moderator today. And now I'd like to turn the program over to Ruth.
Okay. Thank you, Elaine. As Elaine said, my name is Ruth Holst, and I want to welcome you once again to our annual program to highlight recipients of AAUW fellowships and grants. I am currently a member of the Chicago branch and the finance director for AAUW Illinois. I want to thank the Jane Addams branch for agreeing to partner with the Chicago branch once again to bring this program to AAUW members throughout the state of Illinois. This is the 5th year that we are doing our fellows program via Zoom. AAUW just announced that it has awarded $6.2 million to women scholars and community organizations for the 24-25 award year. The awards were given to 261 women and community-based organizations. And I think that's something they've added recently to advance gender equity, access, and educational and professional opportunities for women and girls. AAUW is one of the largest funders of graduate women's education, and since 1888 has provided $146 million in fellowships, grants, and awards to more than 14,000 women in 152 countries. Some of you may not realize that the idea for the fellowships originated with the Western Association of Collegiate Alumni, which was the forerunner of the Chicago branch of AAUW, the first branch in Illinois to affiliate with the national organization known as the Association of Collegiate Alumni. ACA later became the American, in the 1920s, became the American Association for University Women. In 1886, the Western ACA gave a graduate fellowship in the amount of $350 to Ida M. Street to study at the University of Michigan. So the Chicago branch sort of likes to take credit for spreading this idea, turning this idea over to the national organization, which was founded out on the East Coast. Not to be outdone by the East Coast. AAUW has 10 different types of awards, including several types of American fellowships, career development grants, community action grants, several types of international fellowships, international project grants, and a selected professions fellowship program, which is a relatively new program. Today, we will be hearing from recipients that represent two types of those awards. We hope that these presentations will stimulate you to consider making a donation to AAUW to keep the great funding going. I will be introducing each of the speakers as we proceed. If you have questions or comments for that specific to that speaker, or well, either speaker, place them in the chat feature of Zoom. We will address the specific questions for the speaker after each one is finished, and then we'll allow some extra time at the end of the program if you have generic questions that you want to ask both of the speakers. So let's move ahead. Our first speaker is going to be Thallyta Cavoli, who received an International Doctoral Fellowship from AAUW in the 2023-2024 award year. She was born in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and is a JSD, that stands for Doctor of Science of Law, candidate at the University of Illinois-Urbana Champaign. She received her BA in law from the Pontifical Catholic University of Rio de Janeiro and her LLM degree, which is a Master of Laws in Justice, Democracy, and Legal Rights, from the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana. During her master's program, she was the LLM representative of the Education Law and Policy Society and a Street Law Incorporated program member, besides volunteering at a local food pantry in Urbana, Illinois. Her research interests are poverty law, law and economics, comparative law, global studies, interdisciplinary studies, and labor and employment law. Thallyta has been involved with social projects that combat poverty around the globe using various tools, and is now developing a dissertation that unites her personal, professional, and academic experiences to keep contributing to the fight against one of the oldest and worst issues the world faces. Her current project is entitled Excusing Legal Requirements on Claims Based on Poverty Status. Her work delves into the critical need for creating a principle of poverty status, which should be used as a legal excuse in cases where individuals are denied access to certain rights due to not fulfilling all that law requires of them because of their poverty-related issues. I will stop now and let her tell you more about the aims and details of the project. So we're going to put up her slides now for you and turn it over to Thallyta.
Good morning, everyone. It's an amazing pleasure to be here with you all. I'm gonna share my slides here. I hope everyone is seeing it. Thank you so much, Ruth, for the introduction, and thank you, AAUW, and all for besides giving me the fellowship, but all the support and all the opportunities of presenting my work and of getting to know a lot of the people that work, so myself and other people can keep studying and developing amazing projects. So I'm gonna, in this first part of the presentation, I'm just gonna talk a little bit about my background, because then it's gonna be possible for you to understand why am I researching what I'm researching right now. So these two pictures I took the last time that I was back in Brazil. So I am from Rio, as Ruth said, and you can see these two pictures. So from one side, the right side is the view from the Christ of Redeemer. That is our most known touristic spot in Rio. And in the left side, you see another part of Rio. So when you look at these pictures, and that's something that really shocks me, but also reminds me why I'm doing what I'm doing, you see that we have a lot of inequality. So in one side, you're gonna see the buildings that cost more in Rio. That is the south part of Rio, so where more people live, they have more money. And in the left, that's a view that you have when you are getting to this, the most known touristic spot, you pass through this view. So Rio is also known about we have a lot of different slums that we call favelas. We have a lot of people struggling, not having the minimum that they need to survive. So when you see that it's a pretty city, but also that has a lot of poverty and inequality all around. So here talking a little bit about my educational background. So the first image that is Colégio Pedro II was where I did my high school. So this is a federal like school, and you don't need to pay to study there, but you gotta take an exam to be able to be admitted to this school, and then you're gonna study there for free. It was a huge opportunity for me, and it opened my eyes to all the possibilities that I could have. And then down there, you're gonna see PUC, that is a Pontifical Catholic University, where I did my law degree. So in Brazil, you can go to the law school straight out, like high school. So it's a 5-year course there. So I did my law degree there, and it was a great experience. And I picked law specifically because I once watched a lecture in one of these events like this one that AAUW is promoting. And I heard a federal judge say why he picked law and how he could help people financially, because law gives you like some financial, a good financial income, but also how on a daily basis he was deciding and helping people to get the rights they were entitled to, and just how he could serve both on a daily basis, but also investing in people. So that made me think and pick law because I always wanted to serve others, to help others. And then the other pictures, the two in the right, that you can see there is the University of Illinois. So while I was doing my law degree in Brazil, I had the chance. I received a scholarship for a study abroad in the University of Illinois. And then I got to know all the possibilities and all the things that I could do. And after that, I came back to the University of Illinois to do my master's and now my doctoral degree in law too. Those are some pictures of the places that I worked. So I worked in the Public Ministry of Labor in Brazil, and I had the experience of helping to fight work that is kind of slavery-wise, because we still have that type of work in Brazil. So I worked with a specific task force in the Public Ministry of Labor that tried to get those people that are in those work conditions that are pretty bad, get rid of that, and also receive like any money to help them go to a new step in their lives. So I worked there. Daniel, that is the name of there, was a law firm that I worked with IP, especially with trademarks. It was really important for me to learn about diversity and also to help me fund all the expenses that I had while I was in law school. And then below in the bottom are the places that I'm working right now. So I work with the Lehman Center for Brazilian Studies that helps researchers and students in general that study about Brazil to get funding, but also do a lot of different lectures with the Brazil perspective. And I'm also working for the Center of Global Studies that globalize knowledge, but also help people like get funding when they are developing work that goes beyond borders. So I'm right now a graduate assistant in both of these places. But besides that, something that I'm really proud of is that I was always, and I continue being involved with different social projects. So Educafro was actually the NGO that helped me to get a scholarship to go to law school in Brazil. So I didn't have to pay for law school, just had to pay like for food and transportation and all. But they were the ones that got me 100% scholarship there to do my law degree. Bridges International is the association that I'm involved right now. So they welcome and they help international students around town here in Champaign-Urbana, where is the University of Illinois. And I'm leading one of their parts of their community is about like the Brazilians. So I welcome Brazilians in town and all. These are all volunteer work. So besides Educafro, for example, helping me to get to law school, I also, with them, we opened a community course that would help people that didn't have money to pay for preparation to take like the college entrance exams. So my husband and I, we were the ones like leading one of their branches to help those people. Filter of Hope is a project that I usually go on trips every year with them to take water filters. I've been twice to Cuba with them. So it was an amazing experience just to help them, to help the Cubans, and also just learn from them and see all the challenges they go through, but also how amazing of people they are. And Rio 2016, I think maybe that must be the most known of all of these that I mentioned, that was like the Olympic Games. It was the first time that I could actually practice my English. So it was an amazing experience to just get to know people from all over the world and open my mind also to the fact that I really wanted to do something that can be worldwide applied. So why did I say all of this? Because from my background, as I showed you, like the pictures, the part that I am from Rio is not the beautiful part on the right side, but it was actually from the other side. So I came from a city that is really poor in Rio. And that always like made me think about poverty and how could I overcome poverty. And knowing, like, I don't know if you ever heard about it, but there's a book that is called The Five Love Languages. And like my love language is an act of service. So I show love and I serve other people by doing something for them. So with this research, I wanted to do something that could help people. And I wanted to have like a theoretical background because as I showed, I already worked in different places and I keep doing volunteer work that helps people on the ground there. But sometimes so we can reach the people that are in the highest places in a sense of like positions, you need to have a theoretical background. So that's why I went for my doctoral degree, besides the fact that I always wanted to teach. So going a little bit more into my research that is really connected to poverty, we are going to go through those points that I'm showing on the screen. So the main concept and motivation, my claim, the current stage of my research, and also the next steps and goals that I have. So the first part is like, what is poverty for me? So when you are doing a work on poverty, you gotta actually establish well what is the concept you're using, because depending on the country, depending on the place you are, people view poverty differently. So my concept of poverty is this one, that is the one given by the United Nations. And why did I pick this specific concept? Because it encompasses more than just not having enough money. Because if we think about it, poverty is a multifaceted issue. So you cannot only analyze someone that doesn't have enough money to eat. Because, for example, in the US, you are going to find people that struggle to have money to eat, but you're also going to find people that are still considered poor, but they have a car, they have other means, but they're still falling behind in a sense of being able to live a life that really is the way they expected to, a life with dignity. So poverty has different ways of interpreting. So I'm using this specific concept in my research because that gives me like more room to work with the concept of poverty. So it's important also to mention that I'm gonna mention for you guys that there are different countries that I'm analyzing in regards to poverty, and they are gonna view poverty differently, as I mentioned. So you can view poverty as an absolute poverty, the way you can measure it, and then that would mean what? It would mean that when it's absolute poverty measured, you create a threshold, and everyone that earns less than that threshold is considered poor. And for some organizations, that is the basis for the whole analysis. But there is also another perspective, that is the relative poverty perspective. So you're not only going to set a threshold for the whole country or the whole nation or even for the whole globe, but you're going to analyze and you're going to consider that even inside the same society, inside the same country, there is still some inequality, in a sense that, for example, in Rio, someone that is considered poor and living one specific part in Rio, that is a level of poverty. But when the person lives in another part, that can be considered that the person is not poor anymore, comparing to the other part. So the relative measure of poverty, we will understand that there are differences even inside the same society. So you're going to have different thresholds. So someone that is living in a specific part of the country, for example, in Brazil, we have a minimum wage that is national, but that is really difficult because if you receive the minimum wage in a rural area in Brazil, maybe you are going to have a good life and it's going to be fine. But if you receive a minimum wage living in one of the big cities, it's going to be really tough. It's going to be a struggle to live with that minimum wage. So that's the importance of considering the relative poverty measure. You're going to understand that you cannot have a minimum wage that is for a whole nation if you have such different perspectives there and such different backgrounds and realities. So in my work, I work a lot with this UN notion of what is poverty, but I also make this distinction of what is absolute poverty, what is relative poverty. This I also use, that is, I have a lot of data because my work is interdisciplinary, so I use things from law, but also from economics, from sociology, even psychology. So here with the World Bank data, that is one that I use, you can see the poverty is endemic, is everywhere. So 8.5% of the global population are struggling with poverty today. So that shows even more like what is the importance of us doing work regarding to poverty, because it's something that is closer than we think. There are like even more people than we could imagine that are struggling with poverty today. In my claim, being more specific, poverty status should excuse legal requirements to reduce the consequences of poverty. And here, sometimes it's tough to understand a little bit what is this idea of excuse, but the definition of excuse that I'm using is in legal terms, refers to a reason or explanation given to either performing or not performing a particular action. So what is the idea behind? And I'm going to use a specific case to exemplify what I'm trying to do with my work. That is the work that AAUW funded me in 2023, 2024. So the first case, and I think with the case it's going to be easier to understand what I mean by my dissertation. There was a woman that she was trying to apply for a Social Security disability benefit, and they declined her claim because they said that she didn't follow through with all the medical treatment that she could have used. And why did she didn't do that? She proved that she couldn't do all the medical treatments because she didn't have enough material resources. She didn't have enough money. And the Social Security Administration is still denied. Then she went to court. And in the first instance, in the first level of court, they said that poverty cannot excuse. Not having money to afford the medical treatments cannot be an excuse for you to not do the treatments. And then she appealed. And when she appealed about this, then we had sentence saying that actually poverty can be used as an excuse for you to not meet a specific requirement. And what is the idea behind? The law cannot require you to do something that you cannot do. The law cannot require the impossible. So the woman, she was able to prove that she tried, but she couldn't afford the treatment. So in the end, the judge decided that actually poverty was an excuse for her to not perform in that specific treatment, and it should be entitled to the benefit, even not meeting this specific requirement that it should follow all the treatments, because she just didn't meet because of the poverty issues she had. And then just going a little bit like in this claim part, the importance of doing this is because that was one isolated case. But what I'm trying to do is that I want to create a principle that judges and even the legislative, when like thinking about like the law in civil law countries. So we have a difference. Brazil is a country that we have a lot of laws for everything. The US is not. The US is more, relies more on the decisions from the judges. So what I'm doing, and I'm trying to do something globally, creating a principle that people could use, judges or those creating the laws, that when someone proves that doesn't fulfill a specific requirement of the law, especially because of poverty-related issues, they should still be entitled to the right, because you cannot just punish someone, like not let them access a right they're entitled to because of poverty, since it's something that goes beyond their will many times. So in my work, and now I'm almost like finishing already because of my time, I'm analyzing different countries. So I'm analyzing Brazil, US, Cuba, India, Australia, Nigeria, and Portugal. And why did I pick them? I picked them because I tried to encompass the whole globe. So I just finished analyzing the laws, most of the laws regarding poverty in each one of them. They are all struggling with poverty, but they have different approaches and they have different challenges also to deal with that issue. And I can talk more about it at the Q&A session. So I'm working, analyzing all of them. Right now, what I'm doing in my research, I already did all my classes and I already took my qualifying exam. And AAUW was really valuable during like this part of what that I just finished, because when I received the funding, it was exactly in the year that I was getting ready for my qualifying exam. There is an exam that you gotta do in your doctoral degree. That kind of they analyze if you know enough about US law to continue in the program. So having this funding to help me get ready for this exam was great, because sometimes studying and also thinking, how am I gonna pay for the fees of the university and the tuition and all is really a struggle. So having AAUW funding during that time was really important. And I also had the funding during the time that I decided about what I wanted to research. So thank you so much, AAUW, for that too. So right now what I'm doing, and these are the next steps that I'm gonna take, is basically I'm trying to clarify a little bit more and classify when my principle would be applied. I'm also analyzing if that would really work in each of these countries, or if I should think of a different thing to apply to try to actually help them globally to fight poverty. And when I'm saying globally, it's really globally. And there are specific groups, if you consider like women, Black people, and children, they are the one that struggles more with poverty all over the globe. So there are groups that are going to be directly affected if this works, but also other groups. And finally, I also need to develop limitations to my argument. So I'm trying to understand in which circumstances this couldn't be applied. Because I'm not saying here that poverty would justify anything that someone do or do not do, doesn't do. So what I'm trying to say is that there are situations that actually it should excuse someone, but I'm also working on the ones that it shouldn't. And finally, my goals with this work, some people could say, oh, it's to eradicate poverty. She thinks with this work, all the problems are solved. But no, actually, I go more with the second part, the second picture. I'm trying to make a change. I'm trying to make a contribution to this fight, especially because I know what it is to be poor. I know the struggles that are connected to that. And what I'm trying to do is like, I'm already contributing as much as I can on the ground with people, with the social projects. But I also want to get to the academia. I also want to get to the judges, to the CEOs, to people that also can help somehow in this fight. So right now I'm still like, I'm a little bit over the mid of my program. So I still have a lot to develop, a lot to write about and to read about. So any insights you have about my research and also questions about like life and all, I would be really like, I would love to hear. And it's also important for me, any ideas you have also about funding in general, because I keep like applying for different funding so I can keep doing my research. And one of my goals is I always wanted to be a public defender in my country. And I always wanted to open an NGO that would provide free legal and also medical assistance in my town, because in my city, it's really tough to find like good hospitals and just like good lawyers in general that help people that cannot afford. So that is one of my goals. And I hope that as soon as I finish my doctorate, I am able to kind of develop a pilot program to help to test if what I found in my dissertation would actually help people. So yeah, I'm available now for any questions you might have. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thalita, I'm so glad to hear that you plan to go back to your native country and try to make a difference there. I find that very inspiring. Thank you for that excellent presentation. If we don't, Elaine,
We have one
Okay,
one
go.
question. Can you briefly restate the different countries that you're looking at, researching?
Yes, of course. So I'm looking at Brazil because I have a close connection. It's my country. US. I'm also looking in Cuba. That is a country that I've been a few times doing different social projects. Nigeria, Australia, Portugal, and India. So I try to grab like North America, Central America, South, Europe, Asia, and also grabbing Australia and yeah, in Africa.
All right.
Now, how did you select those countries?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So I selected Brazil and US, specifically the US, because I'm doing my research here. So I have a lot of access to data and specific information. Brazil also. Cuba, because besides having this close connection of having done some social projects there, it's a country that I can evaluate the legislation in their original language. So I speak a few different languages. So when I pick those countries, I also try to pick countries that I could read the legislation the way they wrote about. I didn't want to just rely on people that were talking about their legislation.
Right.
So because I speak Portuguese, English, Spanish, I'm learning Italian and some other languages. I picked those countries that I could read the legislation specifically. Nigeria, even though it's not one of the poorest countries in Africa, I picked Nigeria because of the data available. So my first choice was Cape Verde because I've been there with a social project and they speak Portuguese, that is my native language. But then when I was trying to find specific data was really rough. So I changed it to Nigeria because they have more information available online. And India was also because I can find a lot of things in English, like the legislation in English. And I picked them like in general so I could have a global approach. They are in different parts of the globe and they have different culture to analyze, legal and also general culture. So that was.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to our second speaker. If you have questions for Thallyta, you will still have another opportunity to ask them at the end of the program. So our second speaker is Tanya Carter. She's the founder and project director of the Carter Education and Community Foundation. Tanya received a community action grant from AAUW in the 2022-2023 award year. Her award project was a program to improve connections to and opportunities for young people to connect to the world of STEM. Tanya Carter has a master's in nonprofit management leadership, a dual BS in psychology and sociology, and is founder of the Carter Education and Community Foundation. Tanya is a trained community health professional and has been a master community health worker trainer for over 20 years. With 25 years of experience working with individuals and families, she's dedicated to helping people make transformational changes in both their personal and professional lives. She currently works in Rantoul School District, Rantoul City Schools District Liaison, Family Liaison Coordinator, and she also coaches track and cross country. I will let Tanya tell you how she used her community action grant for the STEM program, and then also how she's transitioning her foundation to the needs of the Rantoul City School District in general. So, Tanya, take it away.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. And I first kind of want to talk, just as Thallyta did, about my why and who I am. I found some similarities as she was talking about going back to her, home country. I am originally from Rantoul, Illinois. I actually moved back to Illinois in Central Illinois, Rantoul, officially last year, but I was driving back and forth from Indiana and working in Rantoul. And we started the Carter Foundation. It was in 2021, right after COVID. And we were seeing that not only were their health challenges impacting children and family, but the educational world also was taking a huge hit on how children were learning. Uh, a bit about Rantoul. It used to be a former, it used to have a former, it used to have a Chinook Air Force Base. It left literally 30 years to this year. And we saw devastating changes as it relates to um, the education, employment, as Thallyta mentioned, some legal challenges because we were heavily relying on our Air Force Base to provide a lot of that support and access. Um, we now are a town of only about 13,000. We were well over 25,000, not including the base population at one point. And the base provided us a lot of opportunities for young people to connect to STEM. If you can imagine the military and all that it brings into whether it's an analysis and science and engineering and things like that. So in 2017, my father passed away in Rantoul, and I'm an only child. And as I was visiting back and forth, I just felt like the challenges were growing, and I wanted to um, create some change, be very uh, take action. And I started the foundation in honor of my mom, who is a former educator at middle school level. She coached sports for 34 years, and this year they finally um, actually named the gym after her and another coach for her work with youth. And I also wanted to do the work in honor, in memory of my father, who was the first Black police officer who, in Rantoul, engaged community differently than most traditional programs or how people were working. And then, as you mentioned, I've spent about 25 years in the health industry, but that also included working with families who were involved with the Department of Child Services, and getting them to understand the value of sending kids to school, and also how they were caring for them. So I wanted to continue my work. At the Carter Foundation, we say that we are where time, talent, and treasures converge, and that we like to be a community in movement. And so our efforts allow us to kind of be in different places and also to have a different impact. We work with literally anybody. We work with parents, but we also primarily work with children K through 12. Um, when we looked at this, applying for this grant, we saw it as an opportunity for us to take a different path and bring back some education into the community that would support the work that was being done in the actual classroom. So steps and stems. We also sometimes say steps to stems. Really was about creating those opportunities to show kids or search for ways that STEM could be connected, teach and try STEM, provide that experience because ultimately we want kids to be prepared to succeed. So that little acronym was something that we wanted to kind of keep going, so that we kept saying, steps to STEM, steps in STEM, because we really wanted each of those steps that I just mentioned to be prevalent in the work that we were doing. What we use the grant funding for, we did use it in a couple of different ways. Prior to actually getting started, we actually hosted and led some community-based conversations with both parents and also with high school students, primarily because, again, we were coming out of COVID and we understood that they were trying to quickly scramble to figure out how they were going to connect to college or a trade, but they were really struggling with where to begin. So the first part of our step was really searching for supporters, people in different careers, and also creating um, a what we call a community and career youth expo, where we highlight the different careers that are available for youth to get connected with, ask questions. So always giving them a chance to search out individuals who can maybe answer those questions, and also do some, projects. Our trade organizations, our unions have been very instrumental and supportive in providing practical opportunities for kids. Our high school has taken um, uh, larger steps in connecting to the different um, um, secondary programs or pathway programs. Rantoul is about 20 minutes north of Champaign. And so University of Illinois is, we've partnered with University of Illinois with some of our projects, as well as Parkland College, which is a pathway program to the university. Um, the other thing that we took a lot of time doing with our younger kids is creating just that experience and giving them a chance to try, whether it was, basic robotics type programs, building with Legos. And then I would say the one project that we kept coming back to was creating our own colors using paint, and also looking at the different ratio and keeping track of if you added more of green to your color, and change that ratio, what did it do, lighter, darker? And then the kids got to create projects using their paint. Um, a fun story that I kind of want to share about that is we were working with it was Christmas break, and we were working with a young lady who was 4 or 5, and her brothers were at the same program, and she wanted the color pink, and we, keep changing the color pink for the colors using the red. And she uh, we had a white piece of paper, and then the tablecloth was blue. Well, when she moved it off of the white paper and was on blue, she said, well, it turned purple. And I said, well, no, it didn't actually turn purple. It changed because of the reflection of the light and the color underneath. And she's like, oh, so she kept playing back and forth on the white paper and the blue. And she was super fascinated about how the light was reflecting. And she was using her hands kind of to shade it so it looks different colors. Well, her brother was watching her at this, and he said, I thought you wanted pink. And she said, it is pink. And she then repeated everything that I said about the color and the way it was reflecting. And he was super impressed that she had that knowledge. Now I'm going to pause for a second because I said her brother, and this was is we primarily focused on young girls in this, but we also are a community where daycare is scarce, and we did not want to exclude any children who were interested in being at the place and wanted to take part. But we primarily were always focusing on young girls, but boys were just as fascinated when we were doing some creating lava lamps and doing some other activities. So for us, this strengthened and empowered our young ladies to speak up and share what they were learning through like I said, our career expo. We have an increase in ag and engineering. We also have some science and technology that we are seeing our young ladies gravitate towards. And for us, this is again the experience that we are hoping that they'll be able to get by having interactions with the work that we're doing. The last piece that I kind of wanted to say is we also you started to change the way our coaches, and we were hosting our camps, sports camps with the children. We were looking at aerodynamics and using math to talk about if they're taking a basketball shot, understanding distance to the basket, velocity, all of those different things that between science and math that they weren't necessarily thinking about. And again, the goal was to create the opportunity for them to continue the learning, but it also created opportunity for us to talk about the careers that are related to sports that are mathematical, a statistician who's at a basketball game, um, someone who is the engineer who has to understand when the lights are, going out, what do you have to do? So we created other conversations for kids to see themselves in, and started bringing in individuals in those different occupations as well. We actually took a tour of, um, I'm going to say the Assembly Hall, but I know it's State Farm at the University of Illinois, for them to see the behind the scenes, the mechanics of the sporting world, using connecting and talking to individuals who represented different parts of STEM. So for us to be a community in movement and to take action, we really wanted to take a different approach than just for education that some of our families were and children weren't experiencing previously. How this relates to my role as the family parent liaison in Rantoul City Schools, I get to have those same conversations when parents are maybe questioning why math, and why we need to stick with learning with math, this principle, and getting a tutor because their child is just there and they're getting it, and they've talked about a different career. I get to have those conversations around career development and then make those other connections. I've been really lucky that while I professionally am the district family parent liaison for Rantoul City Schools, the Carter Foundation is a perpetual, partner. We're always able to do all of our programs with the Rantoul City Schools, and the great thing is that we have now strengthened our after school program at our schools. And so STEM is being done specifically for girls at all of those different educational, each of the elementary schools. So I'm super proud that when I'm looking for funding, I'm looking at it in a different way, because the schools are taking up some of the work that we were doing and really kind of leading the charge. We have actually yesterday, a principal came in and was talking to one of our middle school students about her doing hair, and because she's been looking at how you can, change. Obviously, you dye your hair and you do different designs and things like that, and looking at how you kind of create those designs. And our middle school students have also started creating, our young ladies have been creating different mazes, search the, what is it? The scavenger hunts, I'm sorry, for other students to kind of go and looking at how they have to be strategic in planning that out. How much time is it going to take for someone to be able to do that?
Stand for?
STEM means.
So, so kind of to answer that question, science, technology, engineering, math. But I will also say for us, we've expanded into more of a STEAM approach and using art as well into our efforts, because we understand that this has been another way for us to connect to kids beyond the creation of their paints, but also just social emotionally. We know that this has been a great avenue for us to connect and have conversations in a more parallel way with children versus that face to face, and they're more concerned about if they're getting the answer right. We're just having conversations and we're talking. So we in that year we were able to serve 500 children because of our relationship with the students in the school system, K through 12. We had a public school system, and then we also, again, partnered with a couple of the private or feeder schools because their families were utilizing our community service center that we were working at. So we kind of were able to reach several children differently in the ways that we were using STEM. I spend most of my days talking about the power of education to remove the barriers um, that we're all experiencing and the value that STEM can create for children. And we also, I create like mini newsletters using STEM activities for families to be able to do on a monthly basis with their kids so that they again are connecting back to. So that's how we have used our grant money to create those projects, those opportunities, to put things in kids' hands that they could take home and teach their family. And it's been a really great experience. And for me, and the foundation, our goal isn't to always be the end all be all. Our goal is to create the opportunities, and then hope other people with the experience kind of join us in that path. So,
Well, thank you, Tanya. That was very interesting. It occurs to me that you've given us a lot of insight into the challenges of starting up your own foundation. I mean, there are a lot of not-for-profit foundations out there that we're all aware of, but the thought of actually starting one from scratch, the challenges have to be just amazing. And I love the fact that you have been able to weave STEM concepts into, like the sports camps, that you're combining STEM with art projects, to get kids interested. Love the story about the little girl who discovered that, colors that there's a scientific component to colors, that light reflection and other things have an impact. Does anybody out there have a question? Elaine, do we have any questions?
We do. One question is about who do you tap to lead the different activities, and how frequent are those activities happening? And I guess related to that, if you could mention the age range that each activity addresses.
sure. So I'll start with our Art Connects program. I actually have a coordinator, an adult coordinator, to make sure things are going the way they need to. But I actually tap to do the art of it. I utilize high school students to teach the different projects. So they're gaining some work experience, some career experience, but it also creates that multi-generational experience for everybody involved. And
Are
there
they
are
volunteers?
so we've had some volunteers, and because now we're in the after school program, they are part of the paid. Some of them are part of the paid program. Now, when we do it like a Christmas break or spring break, it's all volunteers. It's kids that are wanting to get involved. Obviously, more schools have a requirement for volunteer hours for high school kids to maybe graduate, or if they're looking to get into a program. But I have a lot of high school students who are just excited to be in the same space and work with kids, and specifically with sports and art, who are not interested in the financial benefit of it. And so both, we have both. But again, there's always an adult. I will also add that to that program, we always are always talking about what we're learning, what are our difference. We do that show for everybody for art so that they can see the different shades because those were created differently and the different concepts that people are having when it comes to art. Our sports program, we actually when we do our camps, they're again all volunteers. Those are what we call Saturday skills. And that one we actually also add, I didn't add, mention, we also talk about money, financial literacy, and give kids tools to look at how they're going to spend their money, have a conversation with their parents, and there's some math components to that. Saturday Skills is a completely volunteer. The coaches are adults. They're actually coaches typically of middle or high school. We actually had one of my mom's former students. It was an Olympian, a silver medalist Olympian, and he came back and was working with the kids as well.
Wow.
And we didn't pay him. He came and just
Wow,
volunteered.
that's great.
And then again through our school program, they are paid, but these are adults, and we have two different ways that we're engaging kids around STEM and sports. Is we have our fifth grade sports program was taken away many years ago. We just now this year brought it back. So we're working specifically with fifth grade, the mechanics, volleyball, basketball, track, and then we are through our after school actual program, which is K through 5. We have another set of people. Both of those are paid, but not a lot because we want this to be sustainable. And again, we want people to invest in community and again, be a community in movement, in action. So we don't emphasize on the financial part, but we do know that people are putting some time in there. So there's some financial compensation. We also utilize high school students to help us with demonstrating some of those things or leading different groups. Time wise, our after school program is year round, and so we kind of just rotate for sports, different ones per season. Art Connects, we do. We're rotating by school because through our after school program, those kids are going to be able to create an art project, and we will have an art show for everybody who's been a part of that season or that quarter to kind of see the work that they're doing. The STEM projects that we just kind of complement that are happening at the school are through the after school program. So those are our yearly. Teachers are working and leading those along with some other, like again, high school students. And our role really has been more of taking more of a resource role. If they need a speaker, if they would like somebody to come and demonstrate, if they sometimes need a particular supply, that's been our role to continue because there's some things that they're already getting. And so we spend a lot of our time focusing on who can come and volunteer or guest speak to some of these programs. I think I answered everything.
How do you select who can participate? Who
far
can
as
attend? Or is it open to any student?
Well, it is open to any student, some of the activities. But excuse me, the STEM, they do have like a girls in STEM program. So that is specific. Our art our Art Connects program right now, we just have girls that are in the project or in the program right now. And it really is open to anyone who is interested. Our fifth grade is just fifth grade and it's by sport. So girls sports, boys sports. Yeah.
And another question, how are teachers relating to the Carter Foundation?
So it's interesting because with my mother actually being a former educator and she was an assistant principal, and we're in the town that isn't super large. There are a fair amount of teachers that my mom actually mentored. And so we have large requests for us to be, supporting them. But we have a lot of new teachers that I'm, building relationships with. And I have a dual role. Sometimes my role as the family parent liaison, which is not the Carter Foundation, I'm there to support the well-being of a child. So sometimes that means um, will say it's an adversarial, but it's not. I'm not the district. I'm the advocate for the child's well-being. And so that means also I have different conversations with parents. Even though they know I'm the district, they know that I'm providing the best connections and responses to help their children succeed. The teachers, it's again, it's the same um place. They understand that I wear both hats and that I'm super supportive. We have mentoring. We have, teachers. My mom still comes out and mentors teachers. Um, and she also mentors students who are struggling academically to get to the next level. So we are fairly well received. Um, um, Thallyta spoke about poverty. Rantoul is a community with a high poverty in the community, but emotionally or its overall mentality, it's still back when the base was here, and people feel like we're more affluent than what we are. So my conversations are constantly different, and I bring other conversations that I feel like impact education, like food insecurity, health challenges, and homelessness, and how that impacts the quality of education that children receive. So that's also another end for me to say, here's some opportunities for you to help your children when you're struggling. Go to our youth center because they're going to have certain hours. There's going to be food. We also through the Carter Foundation, um, have support our pantries and have emergency food that we provide families. But in that same space, if I could also share our youth that are in our sports programs, we do talk nutrition and we talk about the science of some of nutrition. We also, our middle school program, we have a foods and hospitality at our alternative program, not our main middle school program. Our alternative kids get access to learning about food science in a different way. And that it's about 50-50 boys and girls in that program. So we really are pushing the envelope. And I still, as I think about teachers, I know that I won't say that people are uncomfortable. They're just challenged to think differently. And they do come back and they ask for, support and some help and some ideas so that they can kind of think differently and work with kiddos. But I try to stay very transparent. I try to stay very visible and bringing different people to support our teachers. And I do show up in classrooms. They do call me if someone's maybe not behaving well. And so then I'm supporting them. And then I have conversations in some of our programs. So um, stay kind of busy as my mom and I and my daughter is involved as well. So she works at the high school, so she mainly works there. But I do show up at the high school, and um, I would say I'm super proud of our community and career youth expo. Colleges, we've had tech colleges come, specific schools in engineering wanting to be there, foods and hospitality, and having those other careers that kids are just not thinking about. And every single time, there's at least a good 30 to 40% of students who are going back to the teacher and having a different conversation around math, science, art that they didn't see, they didn't think before. So that's always my win of every week when a teacher says, I forgot to tell you that so and so really enjoyed this or learned this. And they're asking different questions, and they're all really related to STEM. Um, our next big project is we are working with our custodians who like to build, and we are starting a girls build, two type program. So that we'll be building some different things, which will include measuring and all of those things, for them to get involved, and they're excited for that. So am I.
Another question.
Mhm.
You live in a small town. How did you build the team to establish this foundation?
Well, I actually have three of my board members are from Rantoul. One lives in Chicago, one lives in Tennessee, and the other one lives in California. The other board members live in Indiana and Illinois. And honestly, Rantoul is very unique with having grown up in a military community. Um, think about how a child feels when their parent is deployed and needing that support. We maintain that same connection, that even though we're far away, we're there to support each other in all of our different endeavors. And I just literally just leveraged different individuals that would hold me accountable, as I'm, trying to build this out, but also would be unapologetic for kids. And so my board is phenomenal in that. We have a lawyer, we have someone who's in higher education, we have uh, one who's in math, someone in philanthropic, and health. And so those are kind of the core if you think about it. But the ones that are alumni from Rantoul have been very instrumental, and it's a unique situation that um, we just I don't necessarily do a whole lot of asking for financial um, needs. We're looking towards grants on some level, but a lot of it is just showing up for kids in different spaces, and that has grown tremendously, um, our support and help strengthen our activities that we're trying to do. So.
Elaine, could I jump in with a question?
Sure.
I just, you just mentioned that you don't spend a lot of time going after fundraising. Are you comfortable talking about the financial underpinnings of your foundation and where the money is coming from?
So we had, and I should clarify, it's not that we won't. We will as we move forward. We actually will be starting a capital campaign um to build a hub and a center that will encompass STEM related, trade related. So we will in that respect. But a lot of the work, because we are partnering with the school systems, both the high school and Rantoul City schools and our feeder schools, so a lot of the supplies that we need are going to be covered when we're focusing on our youth projects. And when we started in 2021, when we launched, we had um we raised quite a bit of money.
Mhm.
And what we decided is, through our own evaluating where our needs would be, we would kind of just utilize the money that we raise and then see where things are. We are right at the point now where, again, we're about to launch. our capital campaign for a couple of different reasons, but I'm just really super lucky that people donate items, different items, our art, our science group. And then I do have people who, if I'm sitting at a restaurant, they will just hand me a check. So it's not that
Oh,
we don't.
that's nice.
Yeah, so it's a little bit non-traditional. We are moving to more of a traditional model, but everyone in Rantoul does see the need, and I have a fair amount of people who are supportive. And
Yeah.
I've just told them at the moment, we wrote this grant. It was phenomenal for us to be able to get the tools that we needed to kind of reuse when it comes to like the Legos and things like that we're at different places or and like I said, the school. So we've just taken a different model. We also were coming off of COVID, and we understood that people were not in the best financial place to give. And so instead of focusing on that, we focused on how we used our resources wisely, and really, I will say, focus a lot on the conversations. Our career expo. I couldn't tell you the school probably has close to 1,000. We probably are between 100 and 200 kids. We do it twice a year that show up at our career expos. That's amazing, and we don't have to pay for space, and we don't have to
Yeah.
we're not asking people, like the people are showing up because they want to volunteer. So that is probably the biggest place where we save,
Yeah.
money. But
Yeah.
we do get donations. We do have a few
Okay.
donors that annually give, and we utilize
Well, it
that
sounds like
wisely.
you're doing so much for the community. I can imagine there are people in the community who want to support you. Any
Yeah.
other questions for either of our speakers? Let's open it up to any generic questions you might have for.
There is one for
Okay.
Thallyta. There are some reports that India has made huge strides in rising out of poverty. How does that reflect what you've learned about the country?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, India has been like internationally recognized by having lifted a lot of people out of poverty. But what I found and what I use in my research is that they are doing like a great job, but there is still 25% of the Indian population that is still like struggling with poverty. So what I've been finding in most of these countries, like in Brazil, 1/3 of the population is still struggling with poverty. Portugal has like 17% that is like struggling with poverty. And Portugal has like over 200 different measures that they are using to fight poverty. So what I'm seeing I find this data is like India and these other countries, they have different ways that they are using to fight poverty, but still poverty is something that is really present, that is really found in all their realities. So what I'm doing my program, I'm trying to get also like what are they doing right? Like how did India do that? And then trying to see if my principal would align to what they're doing. How can I contribute, or can I use something that they're doing there in India and then apply like to Brazil or apply to other nations to also help them with poverty issues. So yeah, definitely I saw that they are doing a great job, but that also like every fourth of like the total population of India is still struggling with poverty. So there's still a lot to be done.
How would Nigeria compare? Are
Yeah,
they doing well, or they have a huge challenge?
yeah, the Nigeria, they just kind of publicized the report. So it seems that right now they are doing like a more proactive approach to the poverty issue. So right now they have 40% of the population struggling with poverty. So they seem to be also doing a really good job, but not at the level that India has been able to do. And even I had a friend that she's from Uganda, and she was like, "Why did you pick Nigeria? They are not the poorest country in Africa." And then when I told her they can be not the poorest country, but besides like having more data available, they have 40% of the population struggling with poverty. And then she was shocked. She was like, it's not the perspective that sometimes we have. We look at like the progress, but it's still like a long way to go. So they are doing some specific measures. They released like a full report that I have a few friends that are from Nigeria. We have a lot of people from Nigeria in the law school here in the University of Illinois. So they shared with me some data, and I'm taking a look at that. And they even mentioned Brazil. So I was like, okay, I want to know what they're talking about Brazil too. So they are trying, but it's still a lot to go, a long way to go.
Another question, have there been any legal cases that have used the concept of poverty as you've defined in arguing a case?
Yeah, there have been a few cases. They don't use like the specific like poverty, the UN concept or the poverty status idea, but they mostly use what is especially like looking at the US, they use the absolute poverty concept. So the US, they set a threshold, and everyone that falls below that threshold is considered poor. So for most of these cases, they usually involve a lot of like the social benefits, people applying for social benefits. They have a specific condition that people need to meet in order to prove, oh, they are poor enough to receive this specific benefit. So there are like a few cases that use the absolute poverty concept that I presented, but none that use the concept that I'm trying to create, like the poverty status as a legal excuse. They just analyze isolated and okay, so this person fulfilled these other requirements, is considered poor, so he should receive this benefit or he shouldn't. So this for the US. Like in Brazil, on the other side, you have different perspectives. So in Brazil, for example, we had an emblematic case that someone stole a cell phone from a person. And then in the end, they weren't prosecuted because the judge considered that the cell phone, like the price of the cell phone was like the cell phone was too cheap. So the person was not prosecuted, was not put in jail. So they considered that like because the person that stole proved that like they didn't have money, they have like some different conditions, then they shouldn't be prosecuted because of poverty related struggles. So in Brazil, you have a different perspective to like the poverty approach. If you steal, for example, a loaf of bread in Brazil, you're not going to be prosecuted because they understand that you steal the loaf of bread like to survive. So what I'm looking like these different countries, they have different like approaches to what they consider poverty. So in Brazil, they wouldn't go with the relative perspective. They are more like, oh, this person doesn't have enough to live. So they consider that poverty. But when you look Cuba, for example, Cuba is not like a specific threshold. Cuba is more with the relative idea. So you gotta look to the region, that person is considered poor in that specific region or not. So each country is using a different concept. So that's why I'm going with the UN one. So I can have like a baseline. So like this is what I'm considering. And then I analyze them.
The next question, I think, is for both of you. How were you introduced to the possibility of an AAUW funding?
Yeah, I can answer for myself. So like the University of Illinois, they have a database that is considered, is called Fellowship Finder. And then you can go to that database and they kind of put a list of fellowships within the university and also outside. So when I was looking for different funding for like my program, I was looking at the database and then I found AAUW. And then besides that, afterwards, after I received the funding, I also saw that there are some different cultural centers at the university that they do info sessions about AAUW. So for example, the Women and Gender in Global Perspectives, every year they do an info session about AAUW and the fellowships available. So that was like, I think the two ways that I got to know about AAUW.
For me, honestly, I had a couple of different people who were looking at the work that we were trying to do, as engaging students. And so someone from the University of Illinois um, just said, "Hey, I think you should consider looking at this grant," and sent me an email. I, like I said, I was going back and forth from Illinois to Indiana. And so I had people just kind of looking out for um, ways that they thought we could support the activities we were doing.
Great. Well, any other questions in the chat box, Elaine? No? Well, let's wind it down then. This have been very interesting and inspiring presentations. I can't thank you both enough for joining us today. We as AAUW members love to know, love the whole emphasis on equality for women and making sure women are getting ahead and whatever. And so we love to hear what happens to the awards that are given out to people from the organization. So thank you. And we wish you both the best of luck with whatever you do moving forward. And I see one person's got their applause sign up. So let's do a little, why don't we do a little applause for you before we sign off? Anyone else have anything they want to say? Well, it doesn't, I'm not hearing anything. So thank you, Elaine and Kate, for helping the Chicago branch do this program.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Yeah.
Spending
you so
your
much.
Saturday morning with us.
Yeah. And thank you again to Thallyta and Tanya. TNT. TNT speaking to us this morning. Very inspiring. Very inspiring. And we wish you both the best of luck. And we'll say goodbye now.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.